Oki, Dadanastada, Ambawastich, and Tanse, everyone. Greetings to all of you in the mother languages of the Treaty 7 Indigenous peoples who have stewarded the lands here at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow rivers for generations before many of us came to settle here. And as part of our acknowledgement of where we stand, we also need to recognize our responsibility to carry on the tradition of being good stewards of the land, the air, and the water. To that end, Calgary remains in a drought with a higher than average risk of drought conditions persisting this year, and we are taking this situation very seriously. We're working with our regional partners as well as the province to be ready to respond to drought conditions now and into the future. Calgary is a big city located on a small river. Drought is one of the top hazards that our city faces because of climate change, and so we have taken steps to prepare for the situation that might arise this year. I'm very happy to tell you that in the last 20 years, Calgarians have steadily reduced their water use. In fact, we are taking less water from the river than we did in 2003, and we are serving a population that's 500,000 bigger than it was. We've also been able to achieve a 30% reduction in our water use by making significant investments in infrastructure upgrades as well as replacements. We've been doing universal metering across the city, and we have a leak detection program that's helped us immensely. We're better equipped to respond to both drought and flood risk because of our investment in higher gates at the Glenmore Dam, which has increased the Glenmore Reservoir storage capacity by 60%, and it also serves as flood protection for downstream communities. At the same time, we have been taking steps to make our city more resilient to drought and climate change. We're naturalizing many of our open spaces and areas by adding more native drought-resilient plants. We are also contributing to biodiversity and pollinator habitats by doing so. This morning at Council, as a matter of fact, we will be recognizing some of the innovative work that's been done by the teams to naturalize roadsides. We are taking extra steps across our operations over and above our everyday efforts to reduce water. And as a result, you'll see some changes, like city vehicles looking a little less clean, lakes park spaces looking less green, and many display fountains being turned off this year. Where water use is needed, we're being smart about how we use it. We will be using soil moisture sensors in strategic locations to be able to collect data real-time on water needs. We will also be able to reduce watering schedules and amounts based on the data that we collect. And where stormwater reuse is available, we'll be using it to water young trees, to water flower baskets, and also some city-owned properties. We'll be using efficient irrigation systems that can use up to 30% less water to keep sports turf intact as well. With the water conservation methods that we've undertaken, we're taking a leadership role in modeling good behavior and good water use during a drought. There are many ways in which all of us can take the steps we need to, at home as well, to make sure we're conserving water and saving money. The more you lower your consumption, the greater your savings will be. Some ideas that will allow you to save money on your water bills at the same time that you're conserving water include holding off on doing laundry until you've got a full load. Same thing goes with the dishwasher. Wait until you've got a full load. Taking shorter showers. We can certainly set timers and get into better habits about shower length, and turning off the tap while you're shaving or brushing your teeth. These are all simple things that we can do at home to contribute. And these changes to our routine can save the average household hundreds of liters per month, which really adds up to savings on your bill. And as you look ahead into spring, there are many actions you can take to prepare your yard for dry conditions and make it as water efficient as possible. When you're buying seeds or planting your yard or garden, consider drought-tolerant plants. You can add mulch to your garden to reduce evaporation. You can install a rain barrel to make sure you capture any of the rain that we might get. Now, if you own a business, we know that each operation runs differently, and all of you know your business best. You can try and identify essential and less essential water uses to see if there are potential water savings in that manner. You can fix leaks, you can install water-efficient fixtures, and all of these things ultimately help you conserve water, and they can reduce energy and maintenance costs as well. The city is here to help, and we've been reaching out to businesses to identify ways that they can conserve water. The city has already spoken with more than 200 large water user industrial, commercial, institutional customers. the Building Owners and Managers Association of Calgary, members of the Business Advisory Committee, and the Canadian Prairie Chapter of the Irrigation Association, who represent the landscape irrigation industry within Calgary. Now, last summer, when we asked Calgarians to help us out when it comes to conserving water, you stepped up and you helped us save 1.5 billion liters, and that's the equivalent of 606 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It's in Calgarians' nature to answer the call when we are in a situation that requires assistance, and this year will be no different. That's why I want to thank all of you for being such good water stewards, and I appreciate you letting us remind you early this year that we will need to exercise that kind of conservation again. I'm now going to turn it over to Nicole Newton, who's the Manager of Natural Environment and Adaptation, who will speak in more detail about our current drought conditions as well as the forecast.
As Mayor Gondek said, Calgary and Southern Alberta continues to experience drought conditions. We are taking this risk seriously by taking steps to be ready for both drought and flood this year, along with other climate hazards that can impact operations such as wildfire and extreme heat. Since our last update earlier this month, conditions have improved moderately, but there is a continued risk of drought conditions persisting this year. River flows remain low, with average reservoir storage for this time of year. While the snowfall in the Rockies earlier this month and the snowfall we are expecting this week is welcome, it is insufficient to break the drought. We need above normal snowpack to do that. March and April is when the mountains typically receive most of their snow. Our region relies on the gradual melting of mountain snowpack and spring rains to replenish reservoirs, ensuring sufficient water supply for late summer and fall when the flows decrease. However, the long-term forecast and warmer than average temperatures this spring may increase pressure on our water supply, and it's important that we are mindful about how we are using water. With this in mind, we are prepared to step up our conservation efforts, and it's important that Calgarians are prepared too. Today, we are letting Calgarians know that if dry conditions persist, outdoor water restrictions may be in place as early as May 1st to ensure there is enough water to meet Calgary's essential needs for drinking, for firefighting, as well as to support our downstream neighbors and the river health. In Calgary, water usage tends to increase during the summer months. Much of this is related to outdoor water use activities. Last year's experience highlighted the significance of outdoor water restrictions as an effective tool for conserving water. As we head into the spring, I want to assure you that we will continue to monitor conditions closely. We remain committed to working with our other water users, regional municipalities, and the province to do what is needed to share the available water supply. We will provide another update in late April on the drought response, and in the meantime, we encourage Calgarians to visit calgary.ca/drought for further details on conditions, actions they can take to use water wisely in their homes, in their yards, and in their businesses. Together, we can make every drop count. I'm available for questions.
Just curious, you made a reference to the upcoming snow. I think a lot of Calgarians can see 25 to 30 centimeters. You said it could have an impact, and it's good news. Why doesn't it make a bigger difference to see such a big snowfall? Why isn't that a bigger difference when it comes to the drought situation?
So the winter snowpack is our water supply through the spring as well as the summer. And so we need significant above average snowpack to be able to bring us out of drought conditions. The watershed as a whole is in a deficit, and so it's going to take a significant amount of precipitation to bring us back to normal and to restore the watershed.
Nicole, do we have any of these new irrigation systems in place? When will we? And is there some sort of capital outlay to help us conserve water that we're looking at now?
So the city operations, in our parks operations, already have a number of water efficient irrigation systems in place, and we continue to use the soil monitoring conditions as well to be able to gauge when we're doing our watering activities.
There's a comment about businesses can do things. Is there going to be anything to help compel them to do things, and are we going to try to reuse more than 80% of our to put back more than 80% for that? So
Calgary does return 80% of the water that it does take from the river, and we're continuing to reach out to business associations and support them in understanding their unique business needs in taking steps to conserve water.
Does this mean, and I apologize, Mayor, we have all kinds of traffic issues getting here, but is there going to be some sort of enforcement tied to this, and can we hear more about making every drop count?
So when the city does declare outdoor water restrictions, there is an enforcement component with that. We do take an education first approach. This will be the second season that Calgarians would experience outdoor water restrictions. And so we're doing our best to educate and ensure that Calgarians are prepared. So there's lots of information on calgary.ca to start to understand what water restrictions might mean, so they can prepare their yards and their business practices accordingly.
Why not have water restrictions right now? Like, why not announce them now? It sounds like it would be a good idea anyways.
Sorry. So we're not announcing outdoor water restrictions at this time. It's not until May in when our typical demand increases due to outdoor water activities. So outdoor water restrictions really do address outdoor water use. And at this point in time, there's not a lot of outdoor water use taking place. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to monitor the snowpack and what water might be available, and balancing our response measures with the availability.
So earlier you said in May there may be water restrictions. About 20 seconds ago you said this is the second year there will be water restrictions. Which is it? Will there be water restrictions or might there be water restrictions?
So there may be water restrictions. Thank you for that clarification. We will enact water restrictions as it relates to the conditions that are presented before us. As I had mentioned earlier, we don't get the most of our snowpack and precipitation until March, April, and May, and so we need to continue to monitor that to making sure that we're balancing our response with the water available.
What are some of the key points and metrics that you use to make this decision to implement water restrictions? And so is it flow rate? Is it snowpack level? Is it something involving rate of consumption of water among Calgarians?
So there's a number of things that that our team looks at in order to monitor those conditions. It does include reservoir levels, the demand, the water availability as it relates to snowpack, as well as the river flows. We also look regionally to understand the conditions in the watershed, because our actions can certainly help support downstream users as well.
Has there been any consideration of pulling the economic levers to get people to comply? And by that I mean raising the cost of water.
I'm going to step in on that one. I think the most important thing that we need to outline for today is that we are raising awareness that we're in a drought condition. And there's a lot of people that understand this in Calgary and some that don't. And so the sooner we're able to get out in front of the public and let people know that we are in a drought condition, we are taking this very seriously. The province is taking it very seriously. Our situation here in Calgary is not necessarily the same as other parts of the province. So we remain very active in communicating to the public what we're looking at. So our first step is to educate people on the fact that we are in a drought. To do that, we're having a press conference like this to make sure people are aware of the ways that they could be conserving water. If we're able to do that through our actions, very much like we did last year and in years prior, we'll be in better shape. There's a lot of questions about enforcement and economic measures. I really believe that Calgarians are good people. I believe that they want to work together and make sure that we can address this head on through our own actions. And I can tell you that the business community is incredibly interested in doing the same. So before we start to implement restrictions or other measures, I really believe that Calgarians will pull together and do the right thing because they've already done it. And so past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior. That's why we're getting the messaging out early. The question was, why would you have this if you're not going to announce restrictions until May? Because we're getting people prepared and we're letting them know. The sooner you get information out to people, the better they are able to manage what they need to do.
So are you getting people prepared for restrictions? Is that what you're doing here? You're getting people prepared for restrictions?
We're getting people prepared for conservation, and if the restrictions have to be put in place, at least they will be ready. And so the flag is up. There will more than likely be persistent drought conditions, and if restrictions come, it will be a decision that administration is making in May. But we don't want that to be a surprise to Calgarians. So we're letting them know to pay attention to what's happening, and we will make another announcement as we need to once we've monitored the situation. Yes.
I'm sorry, once again, our lateness. Can you go through what the city is planning to do to reduce its use and what people can do with your every drop count? And when will this all start for the city?
So the city has already started undertaking a lot of measures. One of the comments that I made was the vehicles may not look as sparkly and shiny because we're trying to reduce the amount of times we're washing them. There are irrigation systems in place that are much more efficient than there used to be. There is moisture monitoring that is being used on trees to understand when we should be watering them. Those are the types of big plays that are being made by the city. When it comes to individuals, we've all heard this when we were kids, turn off the tap when you're brushing your teeth. We've all heard it. Sometimes we're not necessarily practicing it. So the little things you can do at home in terms of a full load of laundry, a full dishwasher load, it's just reminders to people.
Just a
New
quick
irrigation
follow-up.
and these new monitoring systems that
do a
you
follow-up?
referred to, how much do they cost?
Can I'll do a follow-up and then I'll go back. Is that okay? Thanks.
You had mentioned that when we first walked in about, you'd save money too. Is there gonna be any change in the rate that we charge people for water?
That is not something that's before us right now. So, the utility rate is set, and we're just trying to find ways for people to not only conserve water, but also save on their bills. And yes.
So my question was about the new monitoring systems you've talked about, the new irrigation systems you've talked about. How much money has the city spent in this sort of preparation?
I'll let Nicole take that one.
So I wouldn't have that information available, but we can certainly take that as a follow-up.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nicole, last year we saw outdoor water restrictions. Worst come worst, if the outdoor water restrictions come in place in May and the situation doesn't get better, does the city has a plan for indoor water restrictions too?
So we're taking steps today to get Calgarians prepared to start changing behaviors for indoor water conservation. The tool that we have available is focused on outdoor water reduction to be able to reduce our water demand for outdoor water activities.
Nothing on indoor restrictions as yet that you have?
The current utility water bylaw does not dictate anything around indoor water conservation. These are behaviors and practices that we look for Calgarians and businesses to take. Thank you.
Just curious, can you clarify? It doesn't take a council decision to move to greater water restrictions, does it? It's just an administrative decision that drought meter moves up to 2 or whatever, and we go into a new state of restrictions, correct?
Correct. A number of years ago, Council approved some updates to the water utility bylaw that outlined the steps that administration can take for implementing outdoor water restrictions.
What are some of the things you learned out of last season, I guess, and maybe what it may influence what you're implementing this year? It could be enforcement, it could be information. Did you feel that, that there's some things that have room for improvement in terms of what the city can do?
Absolutely. I think some of the key things that we learned from last year was really about communicating early and communicating often, which is why we're having this conversation today. It's important to enable Calgarians and businesses to take steps to be prepared for what actions that they might be able to take. The other thing is just ensuring that we're communicating the steps that Calgary or that city operations are doing. We recognize our role to be a leader in conserving water, and so we're taking steps to be able to communicate that.
What about enforcement? Do you see that ramped up this year potentially?
So last year, compliance with outdoor water conservation, last year, compliance with outdoor water restrictions was actually quite good. We've received just over 900 service calls, and it only resulted, I believe, in 2 tickets that took place. And so largely our education first approach continues to be effective, and we'll continue with that this year. I think the steps that we're taking to educate early and often will also enable response this year.
Mayor Gondek, I don't know if this is directly tied, but it is eventually. How are the negotiations with the province going about water licensing? And we talked about being a steward for further downstream. And I don't know if we hear enough about what's going on with the Bow River Reservoir. I'm obviously a critical piece as well. What are your feelings about this? Because by the end of the year, I'm told we'll have some better news about what we can expect.
We continue to remain very engaged with the province. This is something that we need to address together. So I know that the administrative team has been working very hard on the projects that are being reviewed in terms of provincial action. We remain connected with the province to understand what type of flood mitigation they are looking at, and now we're looking at addressing drought as well. So when it comes to water, we are active partners with the province. We think it's incredibly important to be working together on these things. And I can tell you that the admin teams have been working hard on this. From a political perspective, I stay in touch with the minister to make sure that anything we need to be doing from a council level gets done. But things are in really good hands with the admin right now.
I'm told that perhaps negotiations might be done by April, which is another important date that you're telling us about today. Is there any connection there?
So the water sharing agreements that are going to be coming out provincially will more than likely be released in April, mid-April, and that's when you will get a better idea of what it is that Calgary's doing to pull our weight, to make sure that we're working with our neighbors and ensuring everyone's got water safety. Okay.
I apologize for my voice, but can we expect the city to somehow formally reduce its allocation for its license?
This is something that I'm going to turn over to Nicole, because these are the conversations that are being had provincially.
Sorry, just for clarity, your question is in the context of water agreements? Okay. So the water agreements are really about sharing the water available that's available in the watershed, to make sure that all users in the watershed are able to access water. It has nothing to do with our license. And so that remains intact, and we'll continue to work with the province to ensure that we're taking the steps that we need to in order to share the water available.
And then something with the narrative, like reducing shower times and laundry loads. Is that water not just going back into the river eventually, pretty efficiently?
So the water that we don't take from the river means that it's left in the river for both the watershed health as well as downstream users. And so yes, Calgary does return about 80% of the water that we do take, but reducing our withdrawal from the river to begin with is an important step in conservation.